Welcome to Our Curious Amalgam, the weekly podcast brought to you by the Antitrust Law section of the American Bar Association. Our Curious Amalgam explores the fascinating and increasingly overlapping world of competition, consumer protection, data protection, and privacy law. Each week, we bring you leading global experts on the most compelling issues of the day. Enjoy the show.
Hello, and welcome to Our Curious Amalgam, the podcast from the American Bar Association Antitrust Law section. My name is Alicia Downey, and the title of today's episode is, Who is Cani Fernández? Meet the President of the Spanish National Commission for Markets and Competition. Cani Fernández is one of 4 current or former competition agency heads, all women who were featured panelists at the Antitrust Law Section's annual spring meeting in Washington, D.C. in March 2022. There simply wasn't enough time to do these inspiring women justice, so by popular demand, we are dedicating an episode of Our Curious Amalgam to each of them. In this episode, we'll ask President Fernández to give us a brief overview of Spain's competition regime and tell us about some of her agency's priorities and most newsworthy accomplishments. We'll also find out a little bit about her own professional journey to the top. My co-host today is Jaclyn Phillips. Hi, Jaclyn.
Hi, Alicia.
Jaclyn, would you like to introduce our guest?
Yes, I am very excited to speak to our guest today. Cani Fernández, as you said, is the president of the Spanish National Commission for Markets and Competition, and she's been in this position since June of 2020. Before becoming president of the Spanish Competition Authority, Cani had a long career in private practice, during which she specialized in Spanish and EU competition law in a wide range of sectors. During her time in private practice, Cani also taught EU law and EU competition law. Cani has received countless accolades in competition law and has frequently been recognized for her contributions and skill in this area. She's had many firsts as a woman in antitrust law, including as the first woman to be appointed as a co-chair of the Antitrust Committee of the International Bar Association, and she's been paving the way for other women in this field. So thanks for joining, Cani, and I can't wait to dig in.
Well, thank you very much, Alicia and Jaclyn. It is a real pleasure to have to be able to enjoy with you this interview and to be able to share some interesting thoughts that you may want me to.
So to start off and give our listeners, many of whom are in the U.S., some context for our broader conversation, can you tell us what the overall structure of the competition regime of Spain is and, what behaviors are regulated by the Spanish competition laws?
Yeah, of course. Well, the basic lines of our antitrust regime will sound familiar to you because we have Articles 1 and Articles 2 of our Competition Act, which are similar to Articles 101 and 102 of the Treaty of Function of the European Union, but are also similar to Sherman Act 1 and Sherman Act 2. They are dealing with multilateral behavior or unilateral behavior that could restrict competition. But we also have another article in our system that will sound you similar to Section 5 because it is Article 3, which relates to unlawful practices that restrict competition, significantly harming public interest. So it's very similar to your unfair methods of competition. We also have a merger control regime where we have a market share threshold, which makes us a little bit different from, for example, the regime that you can see in many jurisdictions, and including, for example, the European Union, because we have a market share threshold that allows us to capture any merger where a market share of 30% is going to be either acquired or it's going to have an overlap. So in both cases, we will be able to jump in and analyze the transaction. What we are doing now, as you may have heard, is that we are now implementing the transposition of the ECM Plus directive that is trying to give a homogeneous application of the European Union law competition practice all over the European member states. For us, no major changes have to be put in place because most of the powers or the new powers that should be confirmed are already there. But we're making some important adjustments, as for example, time limits and statute of limitations, which is going to allow us for more margin of enforcement, and also the possibility of giving priority to certain cases above others, which is going to be good for us, make our life easier in a way, and concentrating really in our priorities. We are not a criminal enforcement authority, although that's under discussion because some of our criminal types could also overlap with competition infringements. But we can impose fines to individuals, to managers, and we can also impose ban on public tender processes, which are very good deterrent instruments. Let me just mention a last feature of our system is that we work as well in cooperation with our regional competition authorities. As you know, Spain is a decentralized system, and we do have competition authorities also at the regional level. So we work in close cooperation whenever the practices that we are investigating are either under jurisdiction or broader.
That's really helpful context. And, to some extent, that does sound similar to what a lot of us would be familiar with, but there are some notable differences. And this kind of goes to what you were saying about the local enforcement, I think. Can you give us a little bit more about how the commission is organized and how that works between the more regional levels?
Okay, well, let me first start by explaining to you what is the CNMC, so the Commission for Markets and Competition in Spain, because it is the result, in fact, of the merger in itself of former 5 different agencies, so the competition agency, but also the sectoral regulators for telecoms, audiovisual, energy, postal services, transport. So we are, in fact, the result of a combining of all the regulators and the competition agency in one single enforcer. This was done in 2013. And on top of this, we are also adding the advocacy that we are having as a function since we were created in 2013. Before that, of course, there was a very active competition authority, but now we are enjoying the benefits of synergies between regulators, competition authority, and also the advocacy activity that we are deploying. Now, there are 2 chambers in which decisions are taken. One is the competition chamber, the other one is the regulatory chamber, and we also work on the full chamber, the full board, when we have subject matters that either have aspects of both regulatory and competition, or when we are going to be giving, for example, advice in respect to new pieces of legislation being put forward. So we are, in fact, deploying our activity all across regulated markets, but we are also making sure that once those markets are not regulated anymore, they are liberalized, they function properly, and that there are no problems from the point of view of the behaviors that the companies are deploying in them. We have different directorates, directorate for competition, another one for energy, another one for telecoms and audiovisual, and the last one for transports, postal, and air traffic as well. So that's the way it works. They are the instruction body, and then the chambers are the decision body. And then our decisions are, of course, appealable before the judiciary.
And how would you describe your role specifically in that organization?
It's twofold. I am the president of the competition chamber and the full chamber. There is a vice president who will be responsible for the regulatory chamber. But at the same time, I am also the head of the institution itself from all points of view. So I'm the head of the human resources department. I'm the head of the budgetary. I'm the head of absolutely everything. So I really work in very close cooperation with all the members of the agency. But at the same time, I'm also the one that will have to lead the decision making in terms of our enforcement decisions.
Wow, that's a big job. Now, since you've been at the Commission since 2020, what have been some of the agency's most newsworthy accomplishments?
Well, we've done a lot of things that are really worth mentioning. For example, let's start by the international arena. I think we've been very active, extremely active in presence of the CNMC, both in international organizations and bilaterally. The world is more global. Our actions have to be done in cooperation with our neighbors and in close exchange of experiences and reinforcing each other. So we've deployed an intensive relationship with, well, it was already existing, but we've made it even smoother with our neighbors in Italy, in France, in Portugal, and in the north of Africa, which are our natural markets for overlapping purposes. But we've also become very active both in the OECD and at the ICN, because we believe that that's through cooperation that we will be able to improve really the enforcement as it is needed today globally. With advocacy initiatives, we've been also very active because this is the really last mile in the enforcement practice. If we are not able to explain to our municipalities that their actions can also infringe competition, then the very last mile will not be providing this competition culture that we want to achieve. So from very, very local to very global, that has been one of the focuses that we have. I have to say that regarding the enforcement practices, bid rigging has always been a priority of the agency I chair, but it is more so now because, as you know, the EU Next Generation funds that are going to be channeled for the recovery of our economies in Europe are going to mostly be channeled through public contracts, so through public procurement. So that is the reason why we're focusing in this area with a special attention. And in order to be able to fight against potential cartels or bid rigging in this area, we are also improving our digital tools, because, as you know, the world is not only more and more global, but also more and more digital. So in order to be able to detect practices that are happening, in fact, in the digital world, we also need to be digitally more able. And that is why we are also improving very much our tools. We have created an economic intelligence unit that is using pioneer techniques in artificial intelligence and big data. And we are using that in order to fight with rigging in particular, but not only. And it is giving us really very good results. In other areas of my activity, I would say that I am really proud of the liberalization that we've experienced in the passenger railway transport in Spain. I think that's a model. For the last 2 years, we've been able to open up the market, and there are now 3 operators that are providing speed train services. If you want to go from Barcelona to Madrid, you can do that for less than 10 euro in 2 hours and a half, which is really very good for consumers. And this is going to be improved in other different corridors from, for example, Madrid to Valencia or to Sevilla. So we have a very good infrastructure at the railway level in Spain. And what we are doing is trying to open up the market as much as possible so as to use those infrastructures efficiently. And it is working well. I think consumers are really happy. We are also very much focused, and we've been so during the last 2 years due to the circumstances, in protection measures for consumers in the new energy context. We are all aware of the situation. It is really very difficult, both through regulation and through competition. We are very much focused in the energy market so that consumers are not going to pay even higher prices than they should given the context. And also we are very much focused as well in working for new methodologies for audiovisual supervision, because we are going to be granting new competencies in order to make the monitoring of all, not only the traditional TVs, the channels that we were already supervising, but also all those in the digital field, platforms, video exchanges, and this kind of thing. So that's something that we are also doing for the last 2 years, and the new functions will come. Now, from a more general point of view, I would say that the last 2 years, the first 2 years of my mandate, we are working closely also with Congress and with other stakeholders in order to make sure that our law our defense of competition law remains sufficiently in good shape for us to be sufficient good enforcers, and we are trying to convince our Congress to allow us to increase the fines that we are imposing on individuals in cartel cases, for example, because we've seen the potential of deterrence that it is granting us. We are in discussions internally on whether we are the ones imposing directly the bans on public tenders, for example, on duration and scope. And we are considering, and we are trying also to do that job before Congress, to introduce settlements in our competition law in order to make us more efficient and to be able to fight more cartels by diminishing the time that we spend in each of them if we manage to close them through settlements. The last challenge that we've been preparing for is the DMA. As you know, Digital Markets Act has already been approved from a political trilogue, and now we are waiting for the tests to be disclosed, the final test. It's going to be the Commission, the European Commission, the main enforcer, but we are going to be monitoring, helping, cooperating in order for our digital markets to remain open and fair. So that's more or less what we've been doing for the last 2 years and what's coming on as well.
Well, that's a lot on your plate. What do you think will be some of the biggest challenges to accomplishing some of those objectives?
Everybody is experiencing new trends. You can smell that the competition field is moving, is changing, is wanting to adapt to the new challenges that we all are experiencing. For example, we hear a lot about sustainability issues, how to approach them. How can we help them from a competition point of view? Whether we should be accepting agreements that, even if anti-competitive, could provide more benefits under total welfare standards. We are having a consumer welfare standard, and this makes this a challenge for us. Even more so for our agency, because remember, we are also the energy regulator, and we really need to help in the decarbonization process. So it's going to be a clear challenge for us to remain loyal to the principles of competition, but at the same time, being able to help in this very important objective for the whole world. Same could we say for the digital economy. I mean, that's another challenge that we are going to face, both again from the competition point of view, but also from the regulatory point of view. We are the telecoms and the audiovisual regulator, and the intersection is rather clear there. But we really need to be prepared, and prepared means having also the necessary means to fight in order to maintain the digital markets open. We have a challenge that is there, will be always there, and will never be finished, which is increase the competition culture, increase the knowledge by consumers of the benefits that we competition enforcers can provide for the society in general. And that is something that we have to do by communicating well what we are doing, by trying to open the door for any potential help that we can provide to administrations, to companies, to consumer associations in order for them to, maintain a dialogue with us in order to create this competition culture. We have internally some challenges as well that we will have to handle. We have to make sure that we are abiding solid legal standards in all our internal processes. That's something that we are taking care of. Judicial review is always there, and we have to be sufficiently flexible as to understand the messages that we receive from judges, and being able to improve our process internally. We have also challenges in the area of down rates in digital era, how to cope with situations in which the whole of the company is teleworking. How do you access documents and how do you deal with them, for example? We have also to keep working on our internal synergies. Remember, we have regulated markets and liberalized markets, and we have something in the middle. We have markets that are in the way of liberalization and then becoming open markets. So we have to accompany them. But in doing so, we generate synergies. We learn a lot from the ex post analysis into the ex ante analysis, and we are trying to get those synergies even more. But in order to do so, we need to solve some human resources issues because the structure internally in our agency is still based on the idea that there were 5 former commissions or agencies, and these differences internally have not yet been solved. But I'm almost on the way of obtaining the government approvals necessary to change this situation. In a way, we have to boast our new ways of working. We are also in this new world in which, for example, teleworking has to be a good tool, not a hell. It was hell when we were all teleworking at home, especially for women. We were dealing with absolutely everything on our own. That was not teleworking. That was hell. Now, what we are doing in our commission is creating a real teleworking tool so that people can decide on their own how they want to do the teleworking, how they want to organize their lives, their professional lives, in order to make it compatible with also their teams in the agency, and therefore being able to really take the benefits of teleworking and not all the very, very tough situations that we saw. So these are more or less the challenges that I'm having for, let's say, the next year.
Oh, only just the next year. Well, that's a very wide-ranging collection of issues and activity. I'd like to turn now and talk a little bit about your professional journey. Going back to the very beginning, you've had a long career in competition law. Why choose that field?
I think things normally happen in life for the most astonishing situations. And in my case, it was more or less like this. My whole career when I was at university, I thought that I was going to become a lawyer of the state, abogado del Estado, as we say in Spain. I was going to be working for government, that I was going to be defending the public interest. But then when I was in my second course at university, Spain was starting discussion in order to join the then European Economic Community, now the European Union. And then my father was a colonel of the Air Forces, was sent to NATO in Rome and then to Brussels to be part of the Spanish contingent. So my father told me, look, it is now a very good opportunity for you to come and try to do something international. It's going to be a new era for Spain. Why don't you do that temporarily? And then if you want to become a lawyer of the state, you can always go back to Spain. Then I went to Brussels and I studied the European Union law, at the time, European Economic Community law. And then, one thing led to the other. From there, I went back to Spain and then started private practice, not in competition, because there was, at the time, no competition specialty in Spain. Even if we had a law coming from 1963, in fact, we started in Spain applying really, truly competition law after our accession to the European Union in 1986. So when I came back to Spain after my master's in European Union law, I was trying to do competition law, but only thing I could do was due diligence in the competition area when I was doing my M&A work. I ended up being a referender, something similar to clerk, to the European Court of Justice for several years. And that is the moment in which my career was decided. I think even if my former specialty was European Union law, there I was at the then called First Instance Court, General Court today, and I was working mostly in competition cases. And that's the moment in which I think my career gave this turn. And never again I left it.
That's a great story. And I think from, a lot of things you've said today, it's clear that you put a lot of thought into women in the field, and your own career is inspiring for that. So what's the best career advice you have about dealing with gender discrimination?
Well, let me explain to you another anecdote that happened to me. The very first day I joined my first law firm. I was taken by the partner I was going to work with to visit the other partners of the firm. They were very enthusiastic. In fact, I think I was the first or the second woman in the firm not being a secretary. So they were very enthusiastic to see different faces and more diversity. But then there was this guy. I didn't catch the name first when they introduced them to me because there were many other people around. And the guy started telling me that he was not convinced on the role of women in the firm, in working as lawyers, because this was a very tough career. And the moment in which we started really having already a name and sufficient experience was the moment in which we started having children. And then our careers were really being second in row. And then our children were going to be the first thing. And then I remembered that I was getting angrier by the minute. And then I looked at him and I said, okay, look, men or women, the important thing is being a good lawyer, isn't it? So let's see who is the good lawyer here. Then after that, I realized that he had a pin in his tie, and in the pin I could see the initials EC. And then mentally, I was running into my head that EC were particularly the initials of the founder of the firm. So I thought I'm going to be fired immediately. But as it turned out, he started laughing and he said, okay, let's work together and you show me how a good lawyer you are. And well, it worked out. So my advice would be, if you believe in yourself, go for it. I mean, nobody is going to tell you how good you are. You know it.
Great advice.
And now we're going to turn to the final segments of the episode. We do this with all of our guests. First question we have is, can you tell us something interesting about yourself that's outside of your professional life?
Well, let me tell you that I am the mother of 4 from 3 different men. How does it sound to you? Yeah, and it means that organization is one of my, I would say, good skills, because otherwise there would be no way that we could be so happy as a family as we are. Not only that, our 4 children are living in completely different jurisdictions, studying completely different things, traveling around, but always touching base with us at home. So yeah, I think that that's probably the best thing I do in my life.
Wow, that's great. And finally, we're going to play a crazy little game we call the Curious Hat.
And now it's time for the Curious Hat!
The rules are very simple. We're going to pull a random question from a virtual hat, and we're going to read you the question, which will be a total surprise. Go ahead, Jaclyn.
All right. So the question is, when you were a young child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
A pilot of the Air Forces.
Ooh.
Yeah, and the only reason why I asked my father was, the only reason why I didn't is because at that time, women were not allowed in the army in Spain. But then if it would have been the case, then I had bad sight, so I could have not been. But I'm very happy the way I am, I have to say. This is a wonderful career, being a lawyer, and I truly recommend it to our young ladies. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's really great. Well, thank you so much for speaking with us today. It's been very interesting, and good luck with all of your goals.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Our Curious Amalgam, a competition, consumer protection, data protection, and privacy law podcast. It is produced and shared around the globe by ABA's Antitrust Law Section. The opinions expressed by the participants in this podcast are their own and do not necessarily represent their employer or other organizations. If you like what you heard or would like to become a member of the American Bar Association, please check out what the Antitrust section has to offer at ambar.org/antitrust. You can learn more about our podcast at ourcuriousamalgam.com. If you have comments, suggestions, or podcast ideas, please reach out to us at podcast@ourcuriousamalgam.com. Until next time, thank you for listening.